not deluded by any stretch of the imagination. I know you're only here for jambalaya and beignets afterwards. So whatever I say, I know you will forget once you have one of those upstairs. So just bear with me just a little bit longer because we have to make it through. Maybe that will be your mountaintop experience of the week when you will be transfigured. These mountaintop experiences are great, great stories. Perhaps you have had one. They change us. We rarely forget them. They're proof of God's grace and God's love. Usually they're outside somewhere, but they are rare, and they happen when we least expect them. And when we think we need one the most and try to climb every mountain looking for one, we end up finding ourselves lost in a foggy cloud. Then when I hear people talking about their own mountaintop experiences, I get jealous and go down that dangerous path of thinking I'm not good enough to deserve one. So I just as soon forget about mountaintop experiences altogether because they are fleeting and they lead you only right back down to the valley. Nonetheless, if you offered me one right now, I would take it. In our world, I want it here and now. Somebody told me I should create a mountaintop experience app, right? If we could just climb that mountain, if we could just see the face of God, even if it makes us have to veil our own, we could at least get the answers we want. We would see what God looks like. We would ask what God thinks about something we're doing, or ask for advice or direction. Or we would hold God to task and say, what are you thinking? But the reality is that most of us spend the majority of our lives enveloped in some sort of cloud or another, whether we acknowledge it or not. Moses finally gets his mountaintop experience. Most of us know his full story from one of those felt boards in Sunday school. He was born and his mom tried to protect him, put him in the basket, and in the papyrus reeds right next to the Nile River. Pharaoh's daughter sees him and decides to take care of him. Names him Moses, which means literally drawn up out of the water. He grows up in the palace, but Pharaoh later tries to kill him because Moses has killed an Egyptian. Moses flees. You remember then that he's keeping watch of his flock, and he sees God in a burning bush who speaks to him and says, Moses, Moses, you are the one that I'm choosing to lead my people out of slavery. And they follow the cloud and the pillar of fire, and the Lord cares for them. Or maybe you have the Cecil B. DeMille or Mel Brooks version of Moses on Mount Sinai with the tablets of the Ten Commandments. He stays there 40 days and nights. The Israelites, though, start complaining, and Aaron's not doing it for them, and so they build this calf to worship. They have already forgotten about God's faithfulness to them. So Moses comes down, throws the tablets on the ground. God's wrath ensues, and the Lord sends a plague. 10 chapters later than this morning, he goes back up because evidently you can cash in on God's 30-day guarantee for a replacement copy. Another 40 days he is up there. He is changed. So bright was his face of that mountaintop experience of God that he had to wear a veil to protect himself and the people. Moses had interceded up there during those 40 days, and God had changed God's mind. When God's judgment and God's mercy come into conflict, God's mercy can and always will prevail. God does not will and will not forsake God's chosen people, no matter how dismal, how insidious their sinfulness may have become. God listens. God listens when we cry out for mercy and responds with a new promise, with a new direction. Moses begins his life floating aimlessly down a river. God draws him up out of that river, appears to him in an unexpected way, and guides him through by a cloud. speaking to him on a mountain. And he became, in the end, some sort of burning bush in and of himself when he came down from that experience. Peter, James, and John get the same sort of experience on this mountaintop with Jesus. They see Moses and Elijah. Peter gets this bright idea to have a quick capital campaign and build some houses to stay there. He wants to know what he can do to make this moment last longer. But then again, another cloud envelops them, the voice of God right then and there. As much as I am envious of these experiences, and perhaps yours, I'm more comfortable with the image of that cloud. God appears and envelops people time and time again, from Exodus to the tabernacle to the temple. God's presence manifests as a cloud, says something about God. Because clouds don't bring more clarity, they obscure, they hide. And in this sense, they remind us, especially I think, we were talking just now in our forum, as Episcopalians and Lutherans in this congregation, that God is a mystery, that we don't have all the answers, that there are more questions that we would like to ask. Time and time again, God chooses these humble people that we would not expect, like Moses and a bunch of guys who fish. God leads them through the wilderness, reminds them over and over again that there is promise, that there is hope, that people screw up, and that God forgives, and the cloud leads them on again. Yes, it would be great to stay on the postcard mountaintop experience. But God says, no, I'm in the cloud as well. Get used to it. But it's not easy being in the cloud. You know what? It's not easy being in relationship with God. God isn't composed of a series of facts, easily digestible and relatable. God is this mystery. God's presence is enveloped in it. Coming into God's presence isn't like downloading this great search result. It's like entering this thick cloud. Distorted, colorless, disorientated. But there in the midst is the presence of God who has come to be with us. We have to learn as Christians, as citizens right now, how to sit in the cloud. We have to learn how to be patient. We have to learn how to be patient with one another, and more importantly, with ourselves. We have to come to this place where we are comfortable not knowing about something, but knowing about something. This is my beloved. This Jesus is the one we follow. Listen to him is the first direction we get. It is perhaps the hardest part to following Jesus, listening. That we listen because we don't have to be Jesus. Jesus is already Jesus. We don't have to be perfect like Jesus. We don't have to do everything right or have all the right answers. We just have to listen. We have to listen in prayer, which I think is a good focus for us in this 40 days of Lent that we enter this week. Individually, in our own lives, corporately, as a congregation, as we set our face toward Jerusalem. Once again, in a cloud. When we pray, when we listen together on that journey, we grow more comfortable sitting in the cloud. We grow more comfortable, more competent, more confident at thinking about all of our lives, all of our relationships to God and our faith. This week, I hope that you have a transfiguring mountaintop experience. As Christians, as people in relationship with God, expect God to raise you up out of whatever water you are in. I want to know about it. But if perhaps your forecast is more cloudy this week, I'll be happy to be with you there too in prayer, because that's where God shows up, calling us to do something important, sending us forward to be a burning beacon for others, a sign of God's ongoing grace and hope and action in the world. And then go and tell, go be that light. We get to disregard that last commandment because it is after. We are after that point. Jesus told them not to tell them, but it's already after. And we get to share what we know. We know that like Moses and Peter and James and John, we can meet the living God in one another and be changed forever. So listen, get up, and then go. Amen.
Amen.